peeps. So I just wanted to check in with you all. I'm finished grading your coming of age written responses if you turn them in. If you turn them in late, I get a notification from Google Classroom, so you don't have to worry about emailing me. But if you turn them in and you're not seeing them in the gradebook, you can go ahead and shoot me an email. So I do want to go over some student examples, and I do want to look at the prompt that you all were given and then looking at the rubric. Okay, so last week, Friday, you were given the prompt to consider different cultural coming of age experiences that we explored this week. So last week we had explored the coming of age of a young girl at the age of 11, right, in Malaysia. We had explored the coming of age story in Japan, and we had also explored quinceañeras. This week, you're exploring Rumspringa and my favorite, Sweet 16s, okay? So at this point, you only had Malaysia, Japan, and the quinceañera to pull from. It said choose one, okay, right here, all caps. Choose one coming of age experience and compare it to coming of age in your own culture. How are they similar or different? How do these cultures compare to your own? What kinds of rituals does your own culture use to signify adulthood? Be sure to cite textual evidence to support your analysis from another culture that we read about and draw on personal knowledge to explain your own cultural experiences. Blah, 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 hit submit. So I'm going to get rid of this. That's directions. I'm going to get rid of this. That's a little background. And it leaves us with the first part, which is choose one coming of age experience and compare it to your own culture. So ultimately, that's what you're being asked to do, okay? Compare it to your own culture. How are they similar / different? How do these cultures compare to your own, okay? Those are two pieces that sort of fold in. So it's kind of like part A, something to think about, part B, something to think about, right? How do they compare to your own? Then it says right here, what kinds of rituals does your own culture use to signify adulthood? I would argue that this is sort of a different question in here for you to think about, right? So when you're comparing these coming of age things, you have to first think about what signifies adulthood in your own culture before you're able to compare it to another. So this is an important piece also. Then it says, right, be sure to cite textual evidence to support your analysis of another culture. We, your teachers, understand you can't necessarily cite textual evidence for your own personal knowledge. So it says, draw on personal knowledge to explain your own culture. You should be further explaining with your experiences. And then the rubric is below. So I just put these into a doc so I could mark them all up and stuff for you all to see, right? So here's our rubric. And let's say that we want to get a B, which is proficient, right? It means we're right where we're supposed to be. We're writing like an 8th grader who's about to be a freshman. We got this, okay? So writing is clear and logical. Writing is well organized. Let's say, for example, I'm comparing my my experience to Japan. I don't want to make a statement about Japan and how they all become adults when they turn 20 and then say, when I turned 20, I got a new car. But in Japan, blah, 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 blah. But in my culture, when I turned 18, blah, 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 right? It doesn't really make sense if it's going back and forth like that. Your writing needs to seem organized. It needs to flow from one idea to the next, right? Ideas are fully developed. That means I don't just drop a sentence in the middle of something and then move on, right? I actually develop all of my ideas. In order to get a C, which is just below that proficiency, right, that basic level, I have some ideas that are developed, but some that aren't really. Some I just kind of drop in. Citations are correct with few errors throughout. We're going to talk about that when we get to it in the student examples. And then in order to get a B, you need to use one or more pieces of evidence from the text to support your analysis. That's pretty easy, right? Uses one or more, okay? Not too shabby. Not too shabby. This is a pretty solid rubric right here. Good work, Mr. McCulley. You're going to see the task was not attempted and response is too insufficient to grade in the F column. If you only wrote a sentence when you were being asked to do all of this, your response was too insufficient to be graded. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. So I want to look at some student examples here. I have some pull up for us. So the first example that we have is the Japan is different form, how we do our things, where we are, it signifies that you grew up. So, thinking about the prompt, I see that one of the countries that has been chosen is Japan. Okay, you chose another country. I'm a little confused about how are they similar? How are they different? What rituals in our own culture are we talking about? Where's the text evidence, right? All that kind of stuff. This, probably looking at the rubric, it doesn't use text evidence. There really isn't any way for it to be organized because it's one sentence, right? It says citations are incorrect or missing. There's none of that, right? But this isn't even a paragraph, so this is too insufficient to grade. A paragraph wasn't even attempted here. So this actually would receive an F. And I would ask the student to redo this. Let's look at the next example. Same prompt. There are a lot of different cultures that celebrate adulthood. Different, for example, the Aztecs celebrated the quinceañera to celebrate adulthood. Okay, so I know that we're talking about Latin American cultures, right? I think that this person looked back maybe at the article and thought, the Aztec and the Mayan cultures, I'm going to talk about that. Or the Aztec and the Inca, I can't remember which one it was, right? And maybe they said, I'm going to include that, right? And they kind of forgot that we're talking about modern day Latin America. Okay, I can vibe with that. But then there are a lot of different cultures that celebrate adulthood different. We're not talking about a lot of different cultures. We're specifically looking at your culture and another culture. So this one fails to even address comparing and contrasting to your own culture. So if I'm going to go back and look at the rubric again, I would say that this one is a response that's too insufficient to grade. There's not enough there, right? You guys had the vocabulary term sufficient, which means enough. There's not enough there for me to be able to grade and assess your writing skills. So that would be an F, and I would ask the student to redo it. Student example 3 is a pretty good sized paragraph, right? I would say that this is a paragraph, and let's go through. It says different cultures have different coming of age celebrations or experiences. That is a very similar statement to here, right? To this one. Let's see how they expand. For my coming of age experience, so they touch on what colors did we make this? My coming of age experience was green, right? So they say, for my coming of age experience, I will be doing the celebration of turning 18 years old, and we'll be comparing that to the quinceañera. Okay, so here we see what they're going to be comparing and contrasting. So they're telling us specifically this is what they're going to be doing. First of all, they are both different because they happen at different ages. Oh, okay, so that's that part B of the rubric, right? How are they similar / different? How do they compare? They're similar and different because they happen at different ages. The text, coming of age, the quinceañera celebration, states in the first sentence that, oh my goodness, the quinceañera celebrates a girl's coming of age on her 15th birthday. Meanwhile, my culture experience comes at 18. Oh, my culture's experience comes at 18. Okay, so here, right, not only do we have a beautiful comparison, which answers this part, but my favorite thing ever, we have a beautiful, wonderful cited piece of text evidence, right? And since you guys don't have page numbers or anything like that, this person did an awesome job of citing the article. Another difference, right? This would be an example of like a signpost or like a signal word, right? Transitional word is the way they are celebrated. Okay, so the way they're celebrated is another difference that's going to be laid out. The text informs in paragraph 5 that, look at that, here is some more text evidence. Boop. Is this the same shade? No, this one's purple. Oops. Guys, I'm slightly colorblind. I'm having a hard time here. The quinceañera has an honor court, and they have props like tiaras and big dresses. The celebration for turning 18 is usually just a birthday party with friends and family. Okay, so those are two different things. Also, they happen to different genders. Okay, so another difference. The quinceañera happens to females only, while the celebration of turning 18 happens to both males and females. They both represent the passage to adulthood. Okay, so here's a similarity. They're also similar. The text states, oh my gosh, look, another cited piece of evidence, right? In the U.S., when you turn 18, you legally become an adult. So both celebrations represent adulthood. Both the quinceañera and the celebration of turning 18 years old are similar and different to each other. This person did a pretty solid job, right? If we're going to look at the rubric, I thought that their writing was pretty clear. Their ideas were pretty well organized. I'd say some ideas were a little, oops, that's the wrong one, a little unorganized. Not too bad though, right? I thought this was a pretty solid paragraph, you guys. I'm not going to lie, right? The citations piece, I would have graded them over here. They used 2 or more pieces of evidence. It was really well used and really well supported. Citations were good throughout, right? I would teeter this paragraph in between an A and a B. I thought this was really well written. I don't know what you guys think from home, but next one. Here we go. Japan and America are very different, but also very alike. Some things we do in America are happening in Japan. Some things here in America are also very odd to the Japanese culture. Okay? In Japan, the legal year you are an adult is when you are 20 years old, whereas in America, you are considered an adult when you are 18. Okay, so it looks like here is our first comparison. For example, when people in Japan turn 20 years old, they get a huge party with many privileges. One privilege, okay, so here they make this statement with many privileges. One privilege, that is an example of them going, let's underline it actually. That is an example of them going further in detail. So if I look back at the rubric, right, ideas are fully developed. They make a statement, right, about many privileges. They could just leave it there, but they choose to go back in and say one of these privileges is, and then to further develop it. That's awesome. Is legally being able to drive. This is very different for Americans as we get to legally drive at the age of 16. So here is another comparison between the two. Another difference is in Japan, they can legally vote at the age of 20. In the United States, we can vote at the age of 18. Okay, so here's another comparison. The last similarity is about the topic of smoking and drinking. Oh, that is a good transition. What color did I make transitions blue? In America, we can smoke at the age of 18, but drink at the age of 21. Whereas in Japan, they get to drink and smoke at the age of 20. I'll fix that. 20, not 21. I'll overlook that mistake. Although there were many differences, there are a few similarities. Okay, so we had our differences and we have our similarities. So where it says the last similarity is about smoking and drinking, I would think of this as a typo, right? And I might make a comment, differences, right? The last difference is, although there are many differences, there are a few similarities. One similarity, look at that nice transition right there. One similarity, signaling us to pay attention, is Japanese get most of their privileges at the age of 20 in the Japanese culture. Many privileges for Americans happen at a set age too. The age is around 18. Americans can then smoke, drive, and vote at the age of 18. A little repetitive. The last similarity is both cultures throw parties. Okay, so then our last one is right here. The last thing we're going to talk about is throwing parties for when they get these privileges and gifts. For example, when they are 18 in America, they get a party on their 18th birthday, congratulating them on getting their privileges. I didn't have an 18th birthday party. This kind of makes me sad. This also happens in Japanese culture as they get a party on their 20th birthday and they celebrate the many privileges they have received. Although there are many, so here's our like concluding sentence, right? It's signaling us that we are, let's bold this one. It's signaling us that we're almost done. It's reminding us the important thing. Although they are very different, they are very similar. Some things we do in America occur in Japan. Some things here in America are also very odd to the Japanese culture. We are alike and different. One thing that I'm wondering in these two paragraphs here, in the introductory paragraph and in the conclusion paragraph, neither one of them talk about this big word right here, coming of age or adulthood. Right? This particular person talks about adulthood all the way through, but not really in those two paragraphs or in those two little, I guess they're kind of paragraphs or sentences. So if it were me, I'd probably go through and I'd cut this one and I'd cut this one and I'd say, okay, those are two really solid paragraphs right there. So if we think about the rubric, right, and we looked at the prompt, did they cite text evidence? That might be something that hurts them. I don't see any cited text evidence. They have a lot of evidence from the text, right? I don't know if it's supported or if it's cited, right? So they're using evidence from the text to support their analysis, but citations are missing. Citations are incorrect or missing. That's a mark over here. They use a lot of support, but they don't cite it. That might hurt them. Right? Because it's a mark over here. Those are things to think about, you guys, as we go through. The rubrics are there and they're put on the screen to help you. They're not just there so that we can, use them to grade really quickly. They're there to help you. Okay? I hope this video helped you guys think about what we're looking for in our written responses, okay? Have a good Tuesday.